Hi, welcome to some ideas using some 2.5-inch strips with GourmetQuilter. I'm Susan Clare, the Gourmet Quilter, because quilting is delicious. So we've been working on a series of 20 ideas using, starting out with 2.5-inch strips of fabric. So this is actually number 20, so we've been having a wonderful time, and this is the final one in this series. If you've already signed up with GourmetQuilter.com to receive the pattern, you will have something that looks a little bit like this to download and print. And today we're making something really fun. It's time for a treat for us. We are making a little flower and leaf on a little stick. Now how cool is that? You might like a little bunch of flowers for yourself. You might like a little gift for someone else. Whatever it is, they are cute and from 2.5-inch strips. So I've got 3 here, but I'm just going to show you how to make one. So the leaves are wired so that you can shape the leaves, you can twist them, you can do all sorts of things with those leaves. So that's kind of fun. We'll have a little look at how to do that. And the little flowers are on. So what the sticks that I've used, you can have doweling, you might have some fancy sticks, you might have all sorts of things. I have got takeaway chopsticks because that's what I've got. So I've just got some of these that I've pulled apart and I've used those as my sticks and they're working really nicely. So you may want to do something different, but for me that's working really well. So then we just need some pieces of fabric. We need some for the flower, we need some, there's a little petal on the side here, it's very cute. And we also need some strips for the leaves. For the leaves also we're going to need a little bit of florist wire and some little wire cutters so that we can cut it to length, and some fusible web as well. And then we just need a little bit of fill to go in the flower, and if you wanted to, a little tiny bead for the top of the flower there, but that's optional. So I'll go ahead and show you how to do all the different stages so that you can have a go at making some of these if you feel like it. So in the pattern there's a couple of shapes for you to trace so that we can get the petal and the leaf right. So on the petal piece we just want to trace the stitching line. So I've actually already drawn mine, but you can just see through. I've got the light box here, or you might have some other light source, or you could just draw a line. It's not a critical shape. You can see on the flower here that it just sits there. It wouldn't matter if it was a slightly different shape, as long as you are happy with the shape is really what matters. The same thing with the leaf. We just want to trace on the pattern. There's a couple of lines. There's a cutting line and there's a stitching line. The stitching line is a dotted line, and we just want to trace. Now on the flower petal, I should mention, we want to trace that onto the wrong side of the fabric. On the leaf we're going onto the right side of the fabric, so you're going to see the line because we're stitching on it on the right side. So just bear that in mind with whatever it is that you're marking with. And I'm just going to trace a light little bit here near the top of the stitching line, because we're going to stitch on that, but we'll set that one aside for the moment. So that's the tracing that we need to do, so I can move my light box out of the way now, and we'll get back to working on this flower. So the petals are right sides together because we drew on the wrong side of the petal, and we just want to stitch around that line. So we'll go ahead and we'll do this. Just stitching on the drawn line, and as I said, it's not absolutely critical. That's something close, it's good. And now we just want to cut that out, and maybe about 1/8 of an inch away from the stitched line. That's because we're going to turn it out and we don't want too much seam bulk in there. So nothing hard about this so far. In fact, there's not really anything hard about these flowers. They're very cute. So I'm going to turn that out the right way, and I just happen to have an amazingly handy turny tool. Look, this chopstick works so well, multi-purpose, eh? I have a whole stash of these takeaway type chopsticks in my cupboard, and I thought they're just what we need. So I'm just ironing it nice and flat. And then with the actual flower pieces, again we want them right sides together, and I'm just going to stitch one of the long seams, and then we're just going to press over the top edge. So we'll do all this because it's probably helpful to see it all. strips are starting to look a little bit picked over these days. We've been very busy using lots of strips. So I'm going to press that seam open. It's not essential, it's just a little bit less bulk. So I thought if we pressed it open, that would reduce some of the bulk in there. And the other thing I want to do is press over the top. A reasonably generous press over, because that's going to be the top of our flower. Now we're going to open that back out again now to stitch the other seam, but first of all we want to put this petal on. Now I've got it so that there's a different colour underside. You could have it either way. So the way it's sitting is, this is the same, this is the outside. So if you wanted the other one showing on the outside, you just need to decide which way you want that. So we just want to centre that over that seam with the raw edges level, and just put a little holding stitch in there. So maybe just 1/8 of an inch in, just to hold it in place onto the right side. And then we want to fold that over right sides together. The petal is now inside, and we're just going to stitch this other longer seam here with that opened out, the bit that we folded. Okay, and now we want to fold that back again. So the fold line is quite helpful, because then it'll just fold down for us. And tidy that up. And then we want to do a little gathering stitch around the base here, so where the petal's stitched in and things. So if we start from the opposite side to where the petal is, although it doesn't really matter, and I've already started one here, so I've just got a double thread, needle and thread, to do this by hand, and I've just left the end hanging, so I've got a knot in that end. I've started going around already, so I'm just doing a large running stitch so that I can gather this up. It's not, doesn't need to be seen, it'll be inside. So we're working still with it inside out at the moment. And I would suggest that you end up with your both ends on this inside side rather than in the middle there, because we're going to be tying it off on this side. And so when I've done a gathering line of sewing, I like to tie a knot in that end as well as in the other end, and leave both those ends hanging with a knot so that they don't get tangled into something else. And I also do the first part of the tying knot so that I'm ready to just start pulling up when I'm ready to start pulling up. So the next thing we want to do is we want to glue that onto our stick. Now this is probably my worst bit to show you at the moment, because I can't find, oh, here's the glue, because I haven't got a glue gun or anything, and I'm using a high-tack glue, so it's supposedly fast drying, but it doesn't really dry quite fast enough. So we'll nonetheless go ahead and I'll show you what I would normally do. So the glue pot does have a nozzle, but I do prefer to use some sort of a stick or a little pop stick or something to apply my glue. I just find I've got better control, and also these little nozzles do dry up a lot and block and all those things. So I'm just going to make a little mark just here, just to give me a bit of an idea. So we're going to put about, and I'm using the sort of square end of the chopstick in the flower, so there's just this sort of more pointed end at the bottom. So this part is going inside the flower, so it goes right up into the flower. So I've just done a little mark there so that I know where I want to put this. So now I'm going to pop the stick in there so that I can see my mark, and I'm going to just tie this off around there. So you just want to try and distribute those gathers, because that's got the double where the petal is. It'll want to be a little bit flatter there, so just distribute the gathers a little bit and tie it more or less at where that mark is. Tie it off nice and firm, and then we can cut off all those extra long bits. And now what I want to do here is just put some glue in there. So I've just got a little bit on this little applicator stick here. So I'm going to open this out, these little gathered bits. This is a little bit fiddly, and you may have a better way of gluing. I don't do a lot of gluing, so obviously I need to do more. So I'm going to put some glue on my stick around there, and then I'm also going to make sure it's on the little bits of fabric because I'm wanting this to glue up inside. Let's put that out of the way. And now I'm going to get glue on my hands. So just push that up again, and you can probably just use something to just remove some of the excess glue, although we really do want it to glue quite firmly. So once it's sitting there gluing, you just will want to let that set, so that if it's going to be this sort of glue, it's going to take probably half an hour or so. If you've got a heat gun, glue gun or something, it may be quicker. So that's drying there. So I've already gone ahead because of the drying time, and I've got one ready here. This one here is nice and stuck. It's quite firm. It's tied off nicely. So I'm now ready for that one to come up and over. So I'm just going to, still being a little bit gentle because I don't want to wreck everything. It's not that long ago since I glued it. This bit that we had folded in should stay folded in. We're going to pull the flower out the right way and the petal, and so we just want to pull that up so that it's sitting nice and snug on the stick there, and that petal should just fairly naturally just hug around that because we gathered it in with it there. So we've got this wonderful little flower sitting here now, and ideally you'd have another pair of hands or a flower pot that's upside down with a hole in it or something to hold it. So we'll go ahead and we'll keep making the flower, and then we'll do the leaf afterwards. So I'm going to suggest the next thing to do would be to put a little bit of filling, a fibre fill of some sort, and you don't want very much, but just in around the stick so that it just fills out that flower quite nicely. Somewhere there's an area that hasn't got any on the side of the stick. So that's looking quite cute. So you don't want to fill right to the top or anything. There's a little gap in there because we're going to stitch that little top in. So that's looking quite cute. That little petal sitting quite nicely. So now I just need to find my needle and thread, which I've got sitting right here ready. So all I want to do now is find the little quarter points up here. So there's two seams that are opposite, so they're obviously going to be two of those quarter points. So this is not hard to do. It's just a little stitch. I've got a knot in the end of my thread, and I'm just going to catch across the other side where the other seam is, because that's the opposite side. Bring those two little bits in. I don't know if you can see this. Can you see this? I think you can. So that thread, I'm all hands and fingers when I do hand sewing and gluing. So, and I'm just going to do another little stitch just to hold that. So just a little tiny stitch right in the top there that barely shows this stitch. So I'm just pulling that up, and then it's easy really. The other two opposites or the quarter points are sticking out if we just flatten that out now. So all we need to do now is pop a needle into this outside point here and run it across. Now I run across under the stitching I've just done and come out just near the edge on the opposite one there. And so if we just encourage those to open up, that will just bring that nicely, any minute now, into the center there. So I'm just going to do another little stitch just to hold it. And so that's looking really cute. That's a really nice little flower center just there. But I think it's kind of cute to have a little tiny bead, just a little seed bead, but not too tiny because you want your needle to go through it. There's different types of beads, different sizes of beads. If you know about beads, you'll know a whole lot more than me. So I think it's quite cute with just one little bead in the center. So I'm just doing, and that's really all you need to do. It's really only just being held there. I'll just do one more stitch and then I can tie that off. And then we're ready. Already it's looking cute. Then we're ready to have a go at a leaf. So it's a fun little project this, and you can make a whole bunch. Imagine a whole gift for somebody. Imagine having friends around for a meal or afternoon tea and having a little flower on each place setting, or perhaps you know somebody that needs a flower or five and you could just make them some flowers, or maybe you need some flowers Now there's a thought. So that's our little flower. We can encourage that little petal up there, and that's really cute just on its own, but it does look nice with a leaf. So we'll get going on the leaf now. Need any of those bits. Move that. So the leaf. We have 2 rectangles of fabric for the leaf, and we have some wire. Now I've suggested a length for the wire, and I just wanted to show you cutting it. The wire needs to be just a little bit shorter than our fabric. So some wire cutters. Now lots of pliers, lots of all sorts of things have wire cutters on them. These are just a little cutter that I have. So you just want something like that. If you haven't got wire cutters, you can use some scissors, but they need to be old sturdy scissors, the sort you might have out in the workshop, not your best scissors. And just cut it off to the length. So that's not so hard to do. This is just florist wire that they use for putting in stems and flower arrangements and things. So then you want to iron some fusible web onto the inside of one of your pieces. So we're working with these fabrics right side out. So this is going onto the wrong side of the fabric. It's a piece the same size as my fabric rectangle there, and I'm just going to iron that on. Now I have drawn roughly my leaf shape on this other lighter one, so I'm just going to let that cool down a touch. And before we take the paper off, we can just do a little finger press fold, because we need a little valley for that wire to sit into. So just something to give us a bit of an idea where the centre is. Then we can take this off. I've had some wonderful fun doing wired leaves and flowers and all sorts of things at times. So I don't want it to go right to the end. I've come in a little bit there, and I'm just laying that wire right down that fold. It doesn't matter if it doesn't come right to the bottom end. And then we're going to lay the next piece over the top, and we're going to iron it together with that piece of wire inside. So we're now not sure if you can see it, but there is a piece of wire in there. So we're just going to sew on that line that we drew. Just make sure you don't stitch on the wire. You should be able to avoid it. It's not particularly bulky. Florist wire is usually fairly thin. And I'm just going to go to the machine. I'm just going to stitch that stitching line, and then we're going to trim. We're nearly done. I'm going to come up to a bit of a point just beyond the wire, and then come back down the other side. Just a regular straight stitch, nothing fancy about this. And then we just want to trim quite close to that stitching, so probably not even 1/8 of an inch away, because the stitching will hold it because of the fusible web in there. I am using batik cloth as well, but it doesn't have to be batik. Batik doesn't fray as much as some cottons do. However, I've done these with regular cotton and it's fine. Florist wire is usually fairly readily available, either from a florist or a lot of craft supply places have florist wire. So that's our leaf. We're ready to go. Decide if you want it light out or darker out. I'm going to have the lighter out. And then we're back to the gluing again. Because this just gets glued on, and so that again you'll just need to leave it sit while it dries. We need to decide roughly how far up we want it, and I've left a couple of inches at the bottom before I put any glue on, so that you could put glue straight onto the leaf, and we will be doing that, but I like to put a little bit on there first. So it doesn't really matter which way you're going to put this on, but you're just going to glue that leaf on there. So get it started, and then just pop a bit of glue around the rest of the leaf there. Oops, I'll put that glue on my board. And then we're just going to wrap that. Now it doesn't have to be wrapped super tight or anything, but you do want it so that it's going to stick on there, but it will stick as it dries. So that's looking really cute. So I can stand here and hold that till it dries, but it's like watching paint dry. It's not an exciting occupation, but while I'm holding it, I can just show you, you can just have a lot of fun with curling out those leaves. Now you can make different shaped leaves, of course, but I just thought that was such a cute little idea that we would finish off our little ideas with a little treat for you to make yourself a nice little flower. You might have a little pot that you can put them in. You might not. You might need to think of something else to make out of. So that was the last idea for this series. I'd like to thank you for being here. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have, and it's just been so much fun thinking of so many things that you can just do, starting out with a few bits of strips. So thank you again. That was the last idea. I'll see you again on GourmetQuilter.com.